Welcome everybody to FASD Unmasked. We're so delighted tonight to have with us Maggie May and Carol Hunter, two adults with FASD who will bring, I'm sure, inspiration, education, insight, strategies, and so much that so many parents, carers really want to know when we're on our journey as parents and caregivers. I know from personal experience that we all worry about so many things. So we are delighted that both of them have agreed to join us this evening. And we've had like a couple of chats between us about the key areas that we thought would be beneficial this evening. So we've decided that we would split the webinar into 4 parts. So we're going to cover education, employment, breaking barriers, and navigating transitions. Now, that's not to say that you can't ask questions in the chat about anything else that you want to ask both Carol and Maggie, because I'm sure we can integrate questions throughout. And we've had questions pre this evening, which I will try and filter in at some stage. But to ensure you got the most out of it, we've chosen the 4 topics that both Carol and Maggie feel are topics that are brought up to them as adults with FASD, that are things that people want to discuss. So before we move on, before we move straight into education, I'm just going to get both our lovely ladies to just say a quick hello and whatever else they want to say about themselves and what they hope you'll gain from this evening's webinar. So Carol, can I hand over to you first?
Yeah. Hi everybody, my name is Carol. I am the community engagement lead for Adoption UK for their work with the E project. I also am the lead for the adults with FASD for FASD Hub Scotland. Around that, I'm also a mum with 3 kids, and I work full time outside college as a health and wellbeing advisor.
Fabulous. And Maggie?
Good evening, everyone. First, I'm going to apologise. My cats are going to make an appearance. I'm a mom of 2 cats, so they are my babies. And yeah, I guess I do loads of work in loads of different countries, just sharing my experiences of living with FASD and sharing some, I suppose, insights as to what has helped me and what could potentially help other individuals and adults to make their lives a little bit easier on their journey.
Thank you so much, ladies. So let's move on to our first topic. So the first topic we're going to talk about this evening is education. So to kick this off, I'm just going to ask one question, because I know this can just expand massively as soon as we start talking. So the question I have is, what did you most struggle with at school, and what helped, or what do you think would have helped for you individually? So if I could go to Maggie first with that question.
Great question. I think I struggled with, I hadn't been told I had FASD to begin with at that point, so I didn't really know. And so what I really struggled was things like I would be taught how to do, we'll do maths questions, and then I would go home and I would have no recollection at all of how to do it. I would come back into school the next day and the teachers would be like, but we taught you yesterday, you could do it yesterday in the classroom, you're just pulling a fast one. And they really did not understand when I was like, no, I don't remember doing it. It was like I'd never been taught it. And then 2 weeks later, I would know exactly how to do it, because it finally would have made it into my memory. And so I really struggled with not understanding why this was happening to me. I think what would have really helped, and I think I can probably speak for quite a lot of individuals, is just that if schools were FASD informed. And what I'm saying is they don't have to go on these like month-long courses. It's if someone came in and just trained them a little bit about what to look out for, what might be happening in the classroom, so that if there are students in the classroom who may not have a diagnosis but are showing certain factors or demonstrating, things like struggling to remember how to do things or not able to sit still, that they're like, instead of jumping to the conclusion that actually it's the individual just not being motivated or didn't practice enough or didn't bother studying, that split second be like, actually, maybe this is going on. So maybe I'm going to approach this student a little differently, or maybe I'm going to teach this student a little bit differently, or give them a few extra minutes, or, just make sure that they're okay. And I think that would go so far into just benefiting not just one student, but to a whole classroom.
Fabulous. And Carol?
Yeah, so like Maggie, I went through the education system not knowing that I had FASD. Difference was my adoptive parents did know that I had it, but didn't think it was a thing. So I had no support, they had no support. So that was fun. I struggled, like Maggie, with maths. That's the only subject I really did really bad in. But, academically, socially, like, just fitting in, the whole adaptive behaviours, so you kind of like maybe take on behaviours that you shouldn't be, just to try and fit in with certain crowds and stuff like that and make friends. So yeah, I just kind of felt a bit alone, or an outsider. Didn't ever seem to like fit in anywhere, and kind of plodded through that. But I've later learned that I'm very good at math again when I was at school, so nobody really cottoned on to what was going on, and I just used to have meltdowns at home. And mum was like, "Oh, I don't know what's going on with her," but she didn't realise that obviously I'd maths that much during the day. I just came home and it all kind of let loose. And when she did go to the school about behaviours and stuff, they kind of fobbed it off as being, yeah, but because of her background, she will have some troubles. And that was literally what it was kind of like labelled with. So again, for me personally, what really helped was my mum kind of recognising it a bit more and maybe getting the right support, not only for me, but also for her. And then obviously the school maybe picking up on things a bit better. But looking back on it, I wouldn't change how things went, because I think everything shapes you and the future and stuff like that. And what's meant to be will be. And it's got me where I am today, so that's quite good. And very much like the studying thing, it's a deep learning with me, so I've got to rewrite everything to take it in. So even now, I write stuff down like my partner laughs because there's books just full of the same information, but it's the only way I'll retain information.
So what advice would you both give as to a parent who's on tonight, probably sitting at home struggling and worrying about education, whether their child is in a mainstream or a specialist provision? Like, I know for me, my daughter's in a specialist provision and I still worry. She's in a class of 6 and I'm like, she still really struggles with money, time, maths, and I try to just go, just like put it away, just wait a few years. And I suppose I'm in a fortunate position that I work with and engage with lots of people who give me a lot of hope, but there are an awful lot of people who are probably on here this evening who don't have that. So what advice would you give to that parent who is sitting at home at the moment in the depths of despair, thinking, my child is 13 and they're working at the age of a 7-year-old? Carol?
Yeah, so again, it's this whole, you don't need to focus on the stage. Like, the education system is flawed if you are not an academic, whether you've got FASD or anything else going on. If you don't fit inside this box, you're kind of float around the edges. And working in education myself, like, and with the young people that we work with, it's always about celebrating the small wins. If you've made it to like whatever education setting you're in, or you've managed it through a class, or you've managed to do something very small, it's about really celebrating those small wins, because these small wins shape you into who you're going to be. There's no wrong path when it comes to education. So, for example, I struggled at high school, and then I got the qualifications to go to uni. And of course, my mum was like, "Well, you need to go because we never thought you'd get there," kind of thing. And it didn't work out because I wasn't at the right stage in life. I did have the qualifications, but I went up to a city that I'd never been in before, had no life skills, didn't know how to manage money. I still don't know how to manage money. And time management and stuff like that as well. So I totally failed, and I thought it was a failure. I mean, I only achieved my master's 2 years ago, and I'm 40. So there isn't no, it's just when you're at the right stage of your life, and the life experiences and the journey that you go on, you eventually find your way. And I think that's a really important message to put out there. Don't give up. It's just not the right time yet. It will pan out. Things happen in life and stuff that kind of put you on the right path of where you need to be. Like, when I first started out or decided what I want to do, I wasn't doing what I'm doing now. It's really, really strange, but just the way life is. But yeah, have hope and celebrate the small ones.
Thank you. And Maggie?
Oh gosh, I'm going to follow that one up, Carol. I think for me, and I struggled with this for a long time, was for me, I finally looked in mirrors like, what is success? It is, I have to stop putting myself up against other people my age because that's never going to work. I ended up burning myself out because as I was in secondary school, my principal said I was never going to do my end of year exams and I was going to fail. So to prove him wrong, oh boy, did I worked my socks off to a point where I wasn't sleeping. It was just constantly, I was like, I need to prove him wrong. And that's not led me to have burnout for the rest of my life, where every year I get burnt out because of the effects of that. So these days I'm like, what is success? If success is, hey, I remembered to have a shower today, excellent. It's like Carol said, celebrating the really small successes and stop comparing yourself to, oh, I'm 27, so I should be having a full-time job. I should be driving. I shouldn't be living at home. No, if I'm living at home when I'm in my 40s, that's fine. It's not a failure. It's I'm just not there yet. As Carol said, it's all about stages. And I think for me, it's also about having success for me isn't working full time. It is working part time. It is having the absolute honor of being able to work with different organizations and having the pleasure of being able to fly to different countries to talk about what it's like living with FASD. It's for me that's a success. And if it's, hey, your kid loves growing plants, then hey, horticulture. Or if they're love doing stuff with their hands, then hey, baker, woodworker, there's apprenticeship. So there's university isn't always the end goal, and it's even if you don't have certificate on the wall, that doesn't mean you failed. It just means, it wasn't your path, and that's fine.
Yeah, and that's so inspirational, I think. I mean, I think it's so lovely to hear that. And I think when you say, well, if I don't have a full-time job, but I fly around and talk, well, how amazing is that to fly to different countries and speak to different people and to make your mark and make a difference to not only yourself, but also to the many, many families and children around the world who are, growing up with this and navigating this. So I'm going to move on now, ladies, to employment, which is always like a massive conversation for everybody. So I've got a couple of questions, but I don't want to bombard you with two questions at once. So the first one I'm going to ask is, what age were you both when you first had any sort of job, whether that's a paper round or helping at a shop, and who supported you to apply for that job, if you both had that sort of experience? So Maggie, let's come to you first.
It's a very good question. I was raised where my parents like, you don't work if you're still in school, because they wanted all my energy to go into being able to succeed in school and not pulling all my energy into a job. So I didn't actually have a job until, I think my first time was actually advocating for FASD. And that was when I was 18. But then since then, I worked 3 years on an egg farm, which was an experience, and it was really beneficial. So yes, that would be my first proper job, was on the egg farm.
How did you get that job, Maggie?
So it was actually a friend of my mom's who his daughter also had invisible disabilities. And so he really wanted to give this job to someone who had a disability, and so that he could, just, for him it was all about giving back. He was like, so many people with disabilities aren't included or find it so difficult to get a job. I really want to make sure that this position goes to someone with a disability. And to be honest, it was a great fit because it was very sensory. It was hot water, there was towels. It was also it was the same thing every second day. And knowing my challenges of I could never work full time, it was really great because it was 1 day rest in between. So it meant I could recover. But it was also, you know, it was the same steps every time. So I knew exactly what to be. I knew what my hours were. I knew as soon as I went into the room, that was my room. He was very nice and let me watch movies or music. So I'd be like blasting music all over the farm. Poor chickens. But that was my space. And, you know, as long as the job got done, perfect. And he was very nice where he didn't interrupt. He wouldn't come in. He'd be like, "You look, Maggie, you know what you need to do. I've trained you up. If you have any questions, come and ask me. But this is your thing. This is your room. You do what you need to do. Just make sure the eggs get done." And so it was really nice. It was very practical and just very step by step every single time. So there wasn't any shift to my routine or structure, which was, I think, really helped me be able to succeed in that job for so long.
Thanks. And Carol?
So I'm a bit different. My mum and dad brought me up saying, well, if you want nice things, you have to get a job. So my first job was when I was 14. I used to work in the local bakery through the back because you weren't allowed to be through the front shop until you're 16. So again, it was making like the rolls and stuff in the morning. So it was an early start because I was an early riser, so it kept me busy for a couple of hours. And then when I got to 16, I used to work through the back and then go up the road, have my breakfast, and then work through in the shop during the day. And then so I did that while I was right the way up until I left. So what I've realised is that I've always had two things on the go. So I had school and my first job, and then I went to university and I had a job when I was there. And then I came back and I had two jobs. Got two jobs at the moment. So there seems to be a recurring theme there. But I think that's just for me to keep overly busy. And then if I don't have any free time, I can't do anything silly. So yeah, so my first job was through word of mouth. My mum made me type up a CV and go around all the local shops saying, "Hi, do you have any jobs?" Going and handing them in. So that's how that happened. So yeah, it was a bit of a shove out the door going, "You will find something." I'll be like, okay. So yeah, so that's a way she did help me. So that's fine.
But you didn't need, did you need accommodations on your first job, or did you just go with it and manage?
I just won it because I didn't know that it was any different. You know what I mean? It was just me. My mum was like, she needs structure, she needs routine, she needs a job.
Yeah.
So in a way, I get it. So yeah, and because it was quite like, you know, like what Maggie was saying, it was a hands-on job. But when I was young, you know, you were making the dough and you were putting it in the machines, you were taking it out and stuff like that. And then when I moved through the front shop, I was like, I can't use the till. I'll do everything else, just like put me on the till. So yeah, but that eventually managed, you know, when that was an old-fashioned till then, because it was an old bakery kind of thing. When I moved to the next job in the next bakery, it was all like itemized. So you just had to find the button and it's done it all for you. So, you know, I kind of managed to swerve that one.
But it sounds like both of you had those jobs to start with that were very physical, repetitive, learn, dough, eggs. It's just like, because I've spoken to a friend of mine whose son went and worked in a shop in a big shopping mall in a like named sort of makeup store, and like he had a problem because he wasn't allowed to leave through the front entrance at lunchtime, which he was fine with if the security guard was there or the person who could put the rule there was there. But as soon as there was nobody there, he would just go and not think that he was doing anything wrong because there was no prompt. And I just found that really interesting because it was just like suddenly there was like this free space for him and he'd done his job and then it's lunch and it's like they'd told him where he needed to go, but suddenly the entrance in front of him was open so he could just go and he didn't actually know he was doing anything wrong because the thing that made him remember that you weren't supposed to do that was not at the door as the prompt. There was nobody there. And I just found that really interesting when I spoke to him because he was like, the reason that I know not to do it is because the person is there with the jacket on. And if they're not there, then I can't remember. I was like, it's quite amazing, really. Right, ladies, I'm just going to check the chat because our Q&A for some reason is not working properly. So I think everybody's putting things in the chat. Oh, somebody's asked, how do you get a diagnosis? I don't even know if you will both know this. How do you get a diagnosis as an adult I don't think that's a straightforward answer, really. And both of you didn't have to get a diagnosis as an adult. So that's probably something, Joy, that I would suggest you probably ring the FASD advice line for, and we can probably direct you in the right direction. There's lots of lovely comments about how it's so encouraging, tonight's conversations. Oh, okay, Gemma's just said the chat's working now. No, the Q&A is working. So you can ask your questions. Okay, so we're now fast approaching, gosh, we're speeding on. So I'm going to move on to breaking barriers. And I think this is probably the place where most people will want to ask questions. So I'm going to ask a question of both of you. What do you think is the most important thing that parents and caregivers can do to support individuals in both education and employment? So what's the most important thing that, like, as a parent and a caregiver, you can do to help your child in education and employment? And I guess that covers like quite a big spectrum, doesn't it, of age, because your children start school really young, and you know, as a parent, your challenges when they're young are different to when they're old. So I'm not expecting you to give us like a succinct answer on everything, but maybe we'll go for education first and then we can go to employment. So maybe if you could, I think probably a lot of our parents and caregivers struggle when the children are getting to probably between like year 4 and year 8. So between sort of 10 and 14 is the area where parents seem to really struggle, when I guess the difference is that, you know, everybody seems to go on this trajectory where they're all working away together, and then the kids with FASD stay on that level and the others start to fly. And it seems to be sort of 10 to 14, I would say. So maybe let's go for education first. And what do you think's the most important bit of advice that you could give to our parents and caregivers to help them on their journey to support? So maybe, Carol, could I come to you first?
Yeah, like, knowing that probably the parents and carers that are on board are probably massive advocates for their kids already. So it's just to say, well done, you're doing a great job so far, and just kind of keep going. But again, I think it's just it takes time. Is the easiest thing I can do. I think you've got to remember that when we are in an education system, there's so much pressure from that itself to be at a certain stage academically, and then the added pressure of parents maybe trying to go, oh no, you should be doing this, or it could be doing that. I know that's what my mum was like anyway, but she didn't get FASD, so but you do, so that's fine. But again, it's the small ones, you know, and it's doing things in like little clusters works better for me. And I think it's knowing that, you know, especially when they get to maybe like, you know, 13, 14, they're having to pick subjects to decide what they're going to do for the rest of their life. No one knows what they're doing for the rest of their life at that age, let alone someone with FASD that's probably still sitting at primary 7 level. So again, I think it's just I don't think there's a big massive fix for education. I don't think it's going to sort itself out anytime soon with the awareness and recognition that it deserves. But we're slowly making a dent in that with all the work that's getting done across, you know, the UK, that we might notice a difference in a couple of years. But I think it's just kind of, don't put too much pressure on yourselves as well, because parents and carers blame themselves for the way that things are. And then the frustration comes out, and that's when the families start arguing with each other, and it just gets overwhelming. I'm just reflecting on what it's like with me, you know. And I think, you know, you forget that it's not you that's the issue here. And education isn't always a be all and end all. There's no wrong path. You know, even if you go through school and you don't end up with qualifications, there's loads of other ways to colleges. There's, you know, online universities like Open University. There's loads and loads of options to get qualifications at a later stage in life when you're in the right place and you're in the right mindset and you're there because you want to be there. I think that was a big thing for me. You know, it's just like, it's kind of like a light bulb moment. You know, it took for my dad passing to get me back into education. But even though it was something so tragic, you know, it was done for the right reasons. You know, I made a promise to go back to education, and I've done that. Do you know what I mean? And I've got further than what I thought I was going to do because I was in the right stage of my life. And, you know, rather than being 17 and know what I'm doing, I was, you know, 35. It's different, you know what I mean? And that's okay. And I think it's just kind of reminding yourselves, you know, that that is all right. You know, you see loads of other people that have now been in a job for 20 years and then suddenly change direction because COVID's made them realise that they hate it and they want to do something different. And that's okay. So why is it not okay for FASD as well? So I think it's just trying to sit there and say, there's loads of other stuff like, you know, skills development. Scotland do loads of work, you can do volunteering. There's loads and loads of different avenues for you to gain skills and transferable skills that are good for employment that don't necessarily have to be exam-based work.
And also, it's like, even like with neurotypical individuals who, you know, go to college, go to university, and then they decide, okay, well, I've just gone to university to do a degree because I've got the qualifications to go to university, but they don't know what they don't know what they want to do. So they go and do history or something because it's a generic subject. And then they come out and they go and get a job, and then they go and do like a further education thing. I've got two brothers, both of them did MBAs after. Like, one brother went in the RAF, one went in the Merchant Navy. Both have got really good jobs, but both of them didn't go to university. They both went, like, you know, Merchant Navy, RAF, and did these MBAs, but both when they were in their 30s. And neither of them had any diagnosis of anything, and both were quite academic, but neither knew what they really wanted to do. So it was like, but they did it later. And it's not, I don't think it really matters nowadays if you do things later, but I think it's making that really, really apparent to parents and caregivers of individuals with FASD, because I think that's become more the norm for parents of neurotypical kids to go, oh, well, okay, then they'll do it later. Whereas with, I think most parents and caregivers with individuals with FASD worry to the point where it's like, you need to stop worrying. You just need to stop worrying. And it took me ages to just go, okay, stop worrying, because she's not going to do this at this stage. Let's just celebrate these little wins. You know, and but it takes such a long time to do that, to acknowledge that. So Maggie, before I ask any questions, do you want to answer that, and then I'm going to go to some questions before we move on to the next?
Yeah, well, I second everything Carol said. I also think something is just normalizing it. I know in my house it just became a normal thing where it's like, oh, Maggie's having an FASD day, or you know what, Maggie's having an FASD brain day. And so it just became very normal in my house to, and it then came to a point where, like, even my mom would go into teaching, like, Maggie's just having an FASD brain day. She's not going to remember anything you teach today, just so you know. And it's just all about really normalizing it. I also think, as you're saying, at that age, it's when a lot of kids are starting to notice that, you know, they're not able to keep up with their peers, or they are struggling more. And very often, you know, I get asked of, if the child doesn't know, when do I tell them, or should I tell them? And I think this area is telling them as early as possible, but it's also not telling everything at once. It's if your child is noticing that they are struggling with memory, then just say, you know, FASD affects your memory, so it's not you, it's just the way your brain works. We'll find different ways of getting the information in. If it's like Carol, who has to write everything down, for me, I learn by ear. So I record every lecture in university. I record every meeting. Otherwise, I forget what gets said or what I say. And it's all, people worry that once they tell their child that they're going to be labeled or they're going to feel different, but it's actually not telling the child. Is we start to discover things in ourselves, and then we get to a point where we don't want to ask. We don't want to ask our parents, like, why am I doing this? Or why do I keep taking things but I don't mean to take things, but I just can't stop myself. And then we start to internalize that we are these bad kids, or that we're doing it deliberately, or it's our fault. So it's really just about normalizing it. And once you start to normalize it in the family, in your support groups, in your sort of extended family and stuff, then the kids themselves get loads of confidence, I found, to go up to their teachers and be like, look, I had an FASD brain last night. I just couldn't do my homework. I will do it at lunchtime and stuff, and teachers are like, okay, that's fine. that's absolutely fine. So it's just really about normalizing it and to stop making it a topic that people don't feel like they can talk about, because once you kind of get rid of that barrier, things do get a lot easier, and conversations are much easier to be had when it comes to advocating for your child in schools or having to go into wars against principals who just don't get it. So it just becomes a lot easier to be able to take on those battles, I found.
Fab. Okay, so I'm going to ask you both this question. We've had a question in the chat, and I think it's probably a really useful one to our audience. So somebody said, I'm wondering if there might be any advice about what is the most helpful thing that a mum could do to help on the education front. The most helpful thing that a mum could do. And I guess it's like quite a big topic, isn't it? Because there's all sorts of stuff goes on with education. You can have very frazzled children. But what do you think would be the most helpful thing for a mum, and how they could handle it in terms of their response to maybe stress or upset or dysregulation, or the myriad of things that can go on in an education setting? Carol?
Oh, I'm not sure. I think for me, I think it's just being there, just your presence and, listening, and listening to understand rather than listening to respond, if you get what I mean. So I think that's a really big one. And I know what it's like, when it's really frustrating and kicking off and things are said that aren't meant. And yeah, like I've been there with my mum, don't worry, best friends now. But yeah, no. But I think, for her, what she said as a parent was, she's like, well, you don't know what you don't know. So she didn't understand it, and she thought I'd go out it, and she thought, it's just a thing, she'll be fine in a couple of years. And even now I'll be saying stuff to her, and she's like, I don't get what you mean. Like, why you still need to do that? And she's like, so I just give up and go, it's okay, mum, it's fine. But I think for me, it's just having somebody there that gets you, and if you're in school and you're somewhere else and there's all these other people that don't understand you and you don't fit in, it's having that safe place at home where you know that you can just go, right, mum, it's just been an I'm sorry, I'm probably going to yell at you because you're the closest thing to me, but you're going to get it because this is me coming home and letting it all out, kind of thing. And it's kind of, not taking that personally and realizing, actually, this is a good thing that they've been like this with me, because it's because they trust me and they can be themselves around me. And I know it'll take time to get used to that, and then having a bit more constructive conversations about stuff. And then just saying, right, so what did go well today? And again, celebrating the small wins and slowly building that up, before, it causes any damage to relationships and people storm out, like what I did.
Yeah, my daughter says to me, we've worked on it for like quite a few years, 3 or 4 years now, and she'll go to me, I'm really sorry that I'm shouting at you, but there's nobody else to shout at. And I do.
Yeah.
And then at the end of all the shouting, she'll go, I do love you. I just think, well, okay, we're in a good place, because she can scream and shout and throw and stomp and slam a door. And then later she'll go, but I do love you. So I think, well, I'm there. Maggie?
Gosh, once again, I second everything Carol said. I think for parents like moms, dads, everyone in general, I think it's, as we grow up, we forget that our parents are getting older, or they might struggle themselves. Because for us, they're always there. They don't change. Whereas friends come and go, jobs come and go, relationships come and go. Whereas for us, our parents are just always there. And sometimes, and I do it myself, where I forget sometimes that actually my mom isn't 30-year-old anymore. She has her own issues, and she's not always going to be there. So it's really, my mom's been really good, and both my parents have, of just preparing me for the future of, hey, we're going to teach you how to do things. We're going to teach you how to pay a bank statement, or we're going to teach you how to be able to order your own prescription and stuff. And it's very much just always being there. Because we need to have someone on our side, as Carol was saying, just being there. But very often we get into fights with friends who don't get it, or we get called names, or we do things and then we lose friends, or we just need someone who gets us, and we also just need someone who's on our side, whether we're right or wrong. We just need someone on our side who we know will back us up. And then very much later on, my mom will be like, Maggie, you're wrong, so I'm going to explain the situation to you properly now. But when you're in a world where you feel like you're the only one in it and everyone else is against you, just knowing that actually, you know, I did something, but it's okay. I'm going to go to my mom and dad and I'm going to tell them and they're going to help me fix it. It's just being there and not judging. My parents have been very good about some things I've come forward with, being like, this has happened, or actually I've just done this, and oh dear, yeah, I know you told me not to do this, but I did it anyway, and oh, I know why you were telling me not to do it. But they never judged me. They were just like, okay, Maggie, FASD learning moment. Do you now know why we told you not to? I'm like, yeah, I get it now. Help me fix it, please. Just no judgmental and being that person where we can go to our parents about anything and be comfortable to be able to share things that maybe we're not comfortable to share with anyone else, and to know that we're not going to be judged. We're not going to get in trouble. It's going to be a learning opportunity for both sides. Parents can learn quite a lot from their kids with FASD, and we're great teachers, and we can learn quite a lot from parents on the big world stuff that we don't get.
Ah, fabulous, Maggie. Well, it's quite funny because somebody just put in the chat, I assume the advice will be not just for mums, but for parents in general. And I think you covered that absolutely fully. So it's just like either parent, either caregiver, safe space, somebody who totally understands, gets, always there to pick up, trust. Yeah, fabulous. Okay, so let's move on then to navigating transitions, which I think will probably be the biggest topic for everybody, because there are so many transitions that young people have to make from sort of childhood to teens, young adults, adulthood. And I guess there are a million questions I could ask, and I've looked at so many that have come in, and I've saved some to ask afterwards, but I've just taken the general themes. So the first general theme is sort of the young teen. So the child who is, 13, 14, with great expressive language and a poor receptive understanding, but a real need to be like their peers. And the first thing that comes to mind for most parents is social media, phones, iPads, bank cards, independence. And it's just, the whole thing goes hand in hand, really, I think, because when children reach that age where they want that independence, the two things that they immediately want is a phone and a bank card. And many of us have those type of Go Henry things, and we have access to our children's phones, but not everybody does, not everybody knows that. So, and that in itself brings lots of kickback from children who just want to be like neurotypical children. So I would just like to ask you what your advice would be from two perspectives, probably a little bit of how you felt when you were monitored, but also what you felt was beneficial and necessary for you to achieve some sort of independence. And maybe if you've got any comments on when you feel reflectively it would have been age appropriate to give you more sort of autonomy over what you were doing. So Carol, let's go to you first.
So like I was brought up, not strict, I was wrapped up in cotton wool because, my mum and dad like adopted me, and I was registered and all that caper. So I wasn't allowed to do anything really. I don't mind. But yeah, I know I always had a bank account when I was young. I always remember getting, that squirrel from the Bank of Scotland thing, that Super Saver account or whatever it was. So I always had a bank card. But it was more cash back then because like I'm old. So it was more like, there's a fiver, that's to do your week or whatever. And it was always gone within an hour, and I had no money the rest of the week. That's totally fine. But again, it was like, we're not getting anything else sort of thing, and I had to do stuff, and obviously like chores and stuff to get money. And like, I'm not talking about making beds and hoovering the house. I had to paint fences and help do the garden and stuff like that. And then obviously I got a job at 14 because I was to be taught responsibility. And if I wanted stuff and I was going to squander all this money, I had to make my own and spend my own. So I used to do like dancing and youth theatre and stuff. So mom says, well, if you want to still do that, you have to pay it yourself. Didn't last very long, so it's because I had no money. But yeah, but slowly I learned, eventually I'm still rubbish with money now though. I think I wasn't allowed a mobile phone. My dad called it noise pollution, but back then not everybody really had a mobile phone. At 13 and 14, it was a bit later. So I think I bought myself my phone off my wages when I was like 16 or something. So I was quite late for having a phone. And then again, my dad went a bit nuts because he was like, well, you just want that to text boys. And I was like, okay. He wasn't wrong, but I mean, it's fine. But for me, so obviously I've got a 12-year-old who doesn't have FASD or anything like that, but he has a mobile phone, and it was because of COVID kind of seemed to make them seem to have a phone a lot earlier so they could stay in touch with their friends and things like that, because if they weren't doing the online gaming, it was another way that we monitored it. So we were on WhatsApp. And then again, it's the whole technology now. Like, I've got a tracker, I know where they are all the time. And I feel like I'm pure spying on them. But like, it come in handy the other day when they lost the phone and I could tell them where it was. You've left it on the school bus, that's where it is, we'll go and pick it up, sort of thing. Or if they get lost, like for example, they went trick-or-treating last night and it was in a new area, and I was like, if you get lost, phone me, I'll tell you how to get back to wherever you were. So I think it's a bit different now. So like, comparing what I was like when I was younger to now is totally different. And I feel, 16 was all right for a phone when I was younger, but now, 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds are expected to have one. And it's the norm amongst friends and stuff, but it's how to keep them safe. And again, it depends on people's backgrounds, or, the family, dynamics from previous, like, if you're adopted and birth families, there's so much other stuff around social media and things like that too. So you do feel like you might have been a bit unfair not letting them have what others have. But again, me, I'm old fashioned. Like, I wouldn't let them have anything until they're 16 if I got my way. But that's just me. And again, you get all the stuff from the schools about saying, what's age appropriate, whether it's WhatsApp, Snapchat, you get it all the time saying, if they're not responsible enough to have it, they shouldn't have it, and all this stuff. And there's all these dodgy questions and stuff. But every child's their own. But I think it's like, my mum wrapped me up in cotton wool too much that I rebelled against it. Whereas I think if I'd maybe been given a little bit more leniency, I felt like saying, you make me work, but you're not letting me do this, and that kind of thing. I think that pushed me a bit more. And I'd maybe lie and go and do stuff that I wasn't meant to be doing, because I was like, well, if you could just let me do that. I think for me though, I think it was a good thing that she was the way she was, because I probably would have got myself in a lot more trouble than what I did, and I got in a lot of trouble even when she was wrapping up in cotton wool. So yes. Just keep them in there.
I feel vindicated in my mother's role then, Carol, because I'm like, I feel a little bit like a helicopter parent. My daughter went out and had a sleepover last night for Halloween, and she was staying at her friend's who is also adopted and going through the process to get an FASD diagnosis, and they're 13. And the mum was texting me about, we'd made this discussion about, they're just going to want to go out in short black dresses, and that's not appropriate. So we had like multiple exchanges of this friend's mum going upstairs going, you're not going out like that, you're not going out like that. And ultimately they ended up in short black shorts and crop tops, and that was not acceptable either. And they were made to put on black tights under their shorts with t-shirts. I don't think my daughter was at all happy, but she still went out. They went out trick-or-treating in the clothes they were allowed to go out in. And then when they came back, they were really happy because they'd got loads of sweets. And that whole like hour of dysregulation over the fact that they couldn't go out in the clothes they wanted, which were absolutely inappropriate, and that's not what Halloween's about, had sort of gone out the window because they had lots of sugar. So I feel vindicated when I hear you. Right, Maggie.
Oh, I had a very similar, I suppose, where my parents were very, you don't have a phone. until you're 18. Thankfully, in my case, I went to high school like an hour and a half away. So I was just like, look, in order for me to be able to contact you, I need a phone. This was like a while ago. So, you know, at the time they got a very basic phone, you know, it was still you pay for your credit, and you know, WhatsApp and stuff was not a thing. What I will say is I think it's every parent is different, and very often parents can judge when is the right time. With things like phone, money, social media, individuals with FAC struggle with abstract, and those are as abstract as you get. You don't know, you know, you receive a message and you perceive it completely different than whoever sent it. Or, hey, actually, no one has ever actually said you can't send a picture of whatever. So, well, no one's ever said I can't, so I guess I'm allowed to do it. So for me, I'm a huge advocate of, look, if you keep denying, saying you can't have it, they're going to find a way of getting a phone from their best friend who just got a new phone, or hey, we have some pocket money, we're going to secretly buy one. And now there's so much stuff happening that parents don't know about because it's being done in secret. So very often I'm like, look, it's all about supervision, but it's also about just teaching them responsibly of, hey, and it means you have to have these really like cringy conversations of, Maggie, you don't send pictures of your body to anyone. I don't care if they ask. It's sitting them down. My parents, every night I'd have to hand my phone to them because no phones in the bedroom. I wasn't allowed TV in my bedroom either, which really sucked. I thank them now looking back, because I was like, I wouldn't have slept at all. So it's all about, you know, at night I'd hand in my phone, and they would go through my phone, and it was agreement. Me and my parents had a written agreement saying, look, if you give me a phone, I'm going to, it was almost like a contract where it's just like, I give you permission to go through everything on my phone. It's for my own safety. I know I struggle with things, so it's okay. If you find stuff, then the agreement is we have a conversation. It's not a, you don't come attack me and be like, why did you send this? Why have you sent this? Oh, who's this? Who's this? Who's this? It's a, Maggie, we've seen you've done some things. Let's just talk about, is it safe? Is it not safe? How did it come about? Like I said, every day is an opportunity for learning. And also my parents were not surprised at all when they would find me doing stuff that I shouldn't do because of the abstract thinking or the impulse, or I would send a text or I'd send a pic without even thinking, and then be like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Oops, and it's already done. So my parents would be like, okay, Maggie, that's okay. Clearly we still have to do a lot more teaching, or we need to be supervision a lot more. So they would take partly responsible of it, being like, actually, we dropped the ball. We didn't supervise. We actually were not there. So this actually did occur. So it was partly my fault, but it wasn't all my fault, which made me feel a lot more comfortable being able to go and tell them, actually, I've just done this, because it wasn't going to be all landed 100% Maggie's fault. It was that we dropped the ball. We knew you shouldn't have had your phone in your bedroom, but we thought you'd be okay with it. That was our mistake. We now know that we are not there yet in your maturity level. And it's really about normalizing it, and just really, you have to have these weird talks of, hey, can I see all the pictures you've sent? My dad's an IT guy, which was not helpful. When it came to anything on my computer, he would find anything deleted, anything on it he would find. So I couldn't really get away with anything there. But it's just, if you just create an environment, because as I was told I wasn't allowed a phone. I got a phone. I snuck a phone, and all of a sudden, as Carol said, there was so much, you know, my birth family were finding me. They were wanting to add me on Facebook. All of a sudden, I was cousins coming from all over the place being like, I'm related to you. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And it just got to a point where I was so overwhelmed and so caught up in this web. But I couldn't go to my parents and be like, look, I've actually had a phone for the last year, and I've actually got myself into all of this. So they actually discovered it. I'd left it charging. They'd actually discovered it, and they're like, Maggie, we're going to have a conversation. And it was the best conversation ever, because I just was just like, this has all happened. I don't know what to do, and I didn't mean to, and I'm sorry. And they're like, it's fine. We're going to help you sort it out. It's okay. So it's really about just creating an environment where we don't feel like we have to sneak something, because as Carol had said earlier, we really just want to fit in. And whether that's you get the basic Nokia phones that is indestructible, doesn't matter how far you drop it from anywhere, it won't break. If you can text, fine. If it's just WhatsApp, at least you can still communicate. And I'm going to second what Carol said. These days, you know, it is younger and younger because it is becoming such a techie age where even I'm struggling to keep up of TikTok and Snapchat and Pinterest and this and that. I'm like, I'm old. I didn't think I was old.
You're not old. You're not old.
So yeah.
Ladies, can I ask you probably the biggest question of the night before I bring some other people's questions? So I'm going to ask you both. What was the most challenging transition that you both faced? It's quite a big question, isn't it? What was the most challenging transition for you? Maggie, let's come to you first.
Oh gosh, so many. A few like going to university for me, as Carol said earlier, for me I wasn't ready. Well, I was ready and I wasn't, where it was it's so different when you're not going to get in trouble if you don't go to a lecture. Or so if you're just like, oh, I'm having a really bad day and you don't go, you're not going to get in trouble, but you're not going to know what you're meant to be learning for that exam. And so that was a really hard transition for me to like actually get into it, being like, look, no one's going to chase you to go to those lectures, but actually for your own benefit, Maggie, you need to go and you need to, you know, pay attention kind of thing. I think it was just turning 18. Once you turned 18, all of a sudden things get really weird where all of a sudden your parents can't fill out forms for you really. They can't, unless you actually have to advocate and be like, look, I need my mom to come with me into the doctor's appointment because I'm not going to remember anything you said. You're going to give me direction how to take medication. I'm not going to remember any of it. I'm not going to know if you tell me that I have this or that because I'm going to forget. So I need my mom to come in. And very occasionally doctors be like, but no, it's okay. This is for your own privacy that your parents can't come in. And that's where me, shy little me, who does not like confrontation and does not like really like having to stand up to be like, no, I need my mom. I actually need my mom in the room. So it was really strange that once I turned 18, you know, forms, passport applications, ordering your own prescription and stuff, all of a sudden it was, Maggie, you have to do this. We're going to help you, but actually we can't do it for you because of legal issues, and because you're 18, you're considered an adult. I also got my credit card at 18, so that was a huge transition. Yeah, still learning with that one. Clearly, money does not grow on trees, everyone. Good to know.
I think 18 is like my son turned 18 in October and he doesn't have FASD, but he's really struggling. Like he had a dental appointment the other day that I had booked, but it fell after he was 18 and he couldn't go to the dental appointment because he had a football match. So I said to him, but you need to call the dentist. Well, he was just having like a major panic attack and he doesn't have any disability or anything or any diagnosis. And I was like, Sam, no, no, Mum, you call. I said, no, I could have called, but I was like, he is 18, so I'm just going to make him call. And he was literally walking around my house, heavy breathing. And I was like, what's the matter? And he was like, well, what do I say? What do I say? And I said, well, you just call up and say your name and say this. So I was just watching him, actually thinking how difficult it was for him, that transition from mum making a dental appointment to him doing it. And he doesn't have any of the needs for my daughter. And to me, that was like a massive, oh my God, that's just going to be really difficult.
I think for me, if I had a choice, I would have never gotten a credit card or a debit card. No. But because once you're 18, you need it to pay for things, for your prescription, you know, we now live in a world where you need to have one cash, you know, especially after COVID, loads of places are going like, we don't want cash anymore, it's card only.
Yeah.
If I had it my way, I would still be cash, because once the cash is gone, the cash is gone. If you keep tapping, you don't know until all of a sudden
it goes, no, it's not working.
And be like, oh, my bank account's in minus numbers, and oh dear, oh gosh. And then that's another panic of, okay, oh my gosh, I need to go to my parents and be like, can I have some money? Because otherwise I'm going to get arrested, I'm going to jail because I can't pay for my phone bill. And it's just all these weird thoughts. Your son, I've gone through that so many times where like my mom's like, look, you just need to ring up, or hey, can you order a takeaway pizza? the anxiety of, what do I say? Oh my gosh, I've forgotten what size. Oh, I've forgotten. What did you want to your pizza? What size? Oh, to the point where my mom was like, Maggie, just give me the phone, because I'm having panic attacks. I'm breaking.
Listening to you do it.
Yeah, my mom's just like, Maggie, this is cruel. So here, just give me the phone, because this is cruel watching you go through this. I'm like, thank you. So yeah.
Carol, what about you?
Yeah, so I don't relate to everything Maggie was saying as well. I think my two biggest ones are probably becoming a mum for the first time and probably losing my dad. So it's kind of the two ones are the biggest ones, which still affect me now. So like obviously I was 27 when I had my first kid. So like I mean it's not young, you know. Yeah, I was in a relationship, it was stable at the time. But you know, for my mum to then turn to me and say, oh, I don't know if you know how to be a mum. And I'm like, pardon? Do you know what I mean? And I'm just like, what do you mean by that? And she's like, well, I just don't know, that sort of thing. And now if you ask my mum, I've got 3 kids, and she's like, I just think you're the best mother, and I'm so proud of you. And I'm like, oh, proved her wrong. But yeah, again, for me, because you know, I could barely look after myself some days, or you know, and back then you've got this little thing that's just loving you unconditionally, and you're like, oh wait, I'm responsible for you. Like, do I know how to be a mum? You know what I mean? But it just sort of like clicked, and you know, my kids, and I always say that, like, you know, when I was in, because there was such a delay with me, everybody that did everything when they were like 18 and 19, I did it at like 25, 26, and I'm like, I really shouldn't be doing the stuff that I'm doing. It's so like, you know, juvenile. So then obviously when I was pregnant at 27, I'm like, oh, I need to wake up. I need to like, you know, get on the straight and narrow in that. And, you know, the kids have pulled me through so much, like of like when life's went down or something's happened. The kids are there because they're like, well, you know, still need to feed them and look after them. So it's like, you know, when normal people maybe go and hide under a duvet or whatever, I'm like, no, I need to get up for them. So they've been a real saving grace for me. And even when my dad did die, you know, I had 2 of my kids at that time, you know, and I had to get up the next day because, you know, they're wanting their breakfast and stuff like that. So I'm very, very thankful for them. And I do think that they've got me through a lot of the stuff, you know, that I have been through. So yeah, and I mean, we don't always get it right, but I was like laughing when you're when we're talking about, you know, like kids and stuff like that, and how, you know, at certain ages, oh, we're doing this with them or doing that with them. And like Maggie was talking about her phone and that, it's like my 12-year-old hands his phone over every night and he knows that I look through it, and my partner laughs, he's like, is she in for the gossip and stuff like that? You know, and then I will maybe come across something and I'll be like, I'm not having her out yet. But see, next time when this situation happens, don't do this and don't do that. And he's just like, right, okay. Do you know what I mean? Sort of thing. So it's still a norm to do all that. You know, they automatically hand it over now, which is good. So yeah. So they're probably the biggest transitions that have been most challenging for me. You know, I think it's the self-doubt with the mum thing as well. Like all mums think that anyway, but I know, you know, like when you've got FASD, you think everybody hates you and that you're not good enough and that you know that you're not capable of much. So you're like,
yeah, but I sometimes I like, it's really interesting for me to listen to that as an adoptive mum, because I think you know, you have the same doubts as an adoptive mum. You're generally an older mum, so I'm an older mum, and you know, I'm in my 50s, my son's 18, my daughter's 13, both adopted. And I can remember having like major hang-ups about going to parent groups because I was the different parent and I, you know, didn't fit in, and I couldn't talk about birth, and you know, there was all it's like there is things in everybody's life, isn't there? So I think what's really great with this is that with this webinar is that every person can face adversity, and the whole point of this was like to show the success that can come for adults with FASD, and that although you can describe the things that you may have experienced that have been a struggle along the way, you're both like sitting there, you know, successful, inspirational adults, to your own families and to friends, and to, I'm sure, all the parents and caregivers that are here this evening, and to me too, because I look and I think, you know, gives me hope for my daughter. You know, and I just think the world is her oyster and there's no limit on where she'll be, and we don't know where she'll be, but I don't have any preconceived ideas of where she will be, and she'll be where she'll be when she'll be. So I just want to say thank you so much to you both for this evening. It's been an absolute delight to talk to you and to see you both. I'm just going to quickly look at the chat. So Joe said, I'm really grateful to you both for just refocusing me on what's important. Be present, listen, and be there and in their corner, and be a bit okay with some stuff. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I think the moment you mention your kid might have FASD, the first thing people think is how much more limited they might be in their life prospects. You two are great examples to disprove this. Really makes me feel not alone as someone with FASD, all very relatable topics and a great insight. Thank you. It's been so encouraging. So ladies, I think you've done an amazing job. I just want to say from me and from the FASD Hub Scotland, thank you so much for giving us your time, your insights, your inspiration. You're brilliant. I hope you'll come back and join us again in the future, and go and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.